The horses revenged some of the best bites. The air was fresh and carried the sweet smell of grass, wildflowers, and hay from nearby farms. But among all the things Emily loved about her home, there was one thing she loved the most: horses. Ever since she was a little girl, Emily had been drawn to the gentle, majestic creatures. She remembered the first time she touched a horse's soft nose, feeling its warmth and strength under her small hands. From that moment, she knew that horses would always be a part of her life. Her family owned a small farm at the edge of the village, and over the years, Emily had grown up taking care of the horses there. She knew each one by name, by personality, and even by the way they walked. One horse in particular had always caught her attention. His name was Rusty, a large chestnut horse with a shiny coat that seemed to glow in the sunlight. Rusty was tall and strong, with long legs and a thick mane that flowed like silk whenever he moved. But it wasn't just his looks that made him special. Rusty had a quiet intelligence in his eyes, a deep understanding that seemed to reach straight into Emily's heart. Emily spent most of her mornings in the stables, feeding the horses and cleaning their stalls. She loved the routine, the gentle rhythm of caring for living creatures. She would brush Rusty's coat until it shone, run her fingers through his mane, and whisper to him as if he could understand every word. Rusty would nuzzle her gently in return, a silent agreement that he trusted her completely. Despite his calm and gentle nature, Rusty had a streak of mischief. Sometimes, when Emily turned her back, he would nibble at her shoelaces or tug playfully at the corners of the feed sacks. Emily would laugh and shake her head, calling him a sneaky one, but she never scolded him harshly. She had learned early that Rusty responded to kindness, not force. The village around the farm was quiet, with only a few families living nearby. Most of the villagers were farmers like Emily's parents, and they respected the animals in their care. Children would sometimes come to watch Emily ride Rusty across the fields, marveling at how gracefully he moved despite his size. She loved these moments, when the horses and humans shared a simple connection, free of words, just understanding and trust. Emily's mornings would usually start with feeding the horses. She would scoop hay into large buckets, making sure each horse got enough to eat. Rusty would watch her closely, occasionally flicking his ears or stamping his hooves impatiently when she took too long. Once the feeding was done, Emily would brush the horses. She had brushes of different textures and would work carefully to remove every bit of dust and dirt. She believed that grooming was not just about keeping the horses clean. It was a way of building a bond. Rusty loved this part the most. He would lean into her strokes, his eyes half closed in contentment, trusting her completely. After grooming, Emily would often take Rusty out into the fields for a ride. The sunlight would glint off his coat, and the wind would ripple through his mane as they moved together. Emily loved the feeling of freedom that came with riding. She could feel Rusty's strength beneath her, his powerful muscles working in harmony with her movements. They would trot along the paths, Emily's laughter mixing with the sound of Rusty's hooves against the soft earth. It was a simple joy, but it was the kind that stayed in your heart forever. Despite the peace of these mornings, Emily knew that taking care of horses required constant attention. Horses were intelligent and sensitive creatures, and they could sense emotions. Rusty, in particular, was very aware of his surroundings. If someone approached the stable loudly or roughly, Rusty would twitch his ears or shift nervously. Emily had learned to watch for these small signals. She knew that understanding a horse's feelings was as important as feeding or grooming them. Sometimes visitors would come to the farm, and not all of them understood horses the way Emily did. She would often remind them to be gentle, to speak softly, and to respect the animal's space. Rusty could be patient, but he did not like to be rushed or treated roughly. Emily had seen it before. A horse that was scared or angry could react quickly, and even the most experienced rider needed to be careful. Emily's love for horses extended beyond her daily chores. She would spend hours reading about them, learning about their behavior, their diets, and the best ways to train them. She wanted to understand them fully, to see the world from their perspective. Rusty, in turn, seemed to respond to her dedication. He was calm, obedient, and affectionate, but also full of life and curiosity. It was this mix of calm and spirit that made him so special to Emily. One morning, as the sun rose over the fields, Emily was brushing Rusty in the stable. The light streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow on his chestnut coat. She noticed a small twitch in his ear and a flick of his tail, signals that he was alert. She smiled, knowing that Rusty was always paying attention. He was not just a pet or an animal to be cared for. He was a friend, a companion, and sometimes a teacher. Emily's connection with Rusty was more than just routine. It was built on trust, respect, and understanding. She knew that if she ever needed him, he would be there. And she hoped that she would always be there for him, no matter what. The peaceful mornings, the gentle brushing, and the quiet rides across the fields were just the beginning of a story that Emily and Rusty were creating together. A story full of learning, growth, and sometimes unexpected challenges. As the day went on, Emily continued with her chores. She fed the other horses, cleaned the stables, and checked the fences. Each task, though simple, was a way to care for the animals she loved. Rusty stood nearby, watching her every move, occasionally nudging her hand for attention. Emily laughed and scratched behind his ears, feeling a deep sense of contentment. This was her life, simple yet meaningful, filled with the quiet joys of the countryside and the deep bond she shared with her horses. Little did Emily know, however, that the calm of her mornings was only the beginning. Rusty's intelligence and sensitive nature meant that he would not hesitate to react if provoked or mistreated. The peaceful days she loved so much would soon be tested, not by danger or disaster, but by simple misunderstandings and human carelessness. And through it all, Emily would learn that her connection with Rusty was more than just love. It was also about respect, patience, and understanding the mind of a creature who, in his own way, had his own sense of fairness. For now, though, Emily and Rusty enjoyed the quiet. The sun was warm, the fields were green, and the air was filled with the gentle sounds of nature. It was a perfect morning, one of those moments that felt like it could last forever. Emily brushed Rusty one last time before heading back to the farmhouse for breakfast, feeling grateful for the bond they shared and the life they had built together. And Rusty, standing tall and proud, seemed to understand that this trust and care was the foundation of everything. The sun was bright and warm that morning as Emily walked across the fields toward the stables. Rusty trotted beside her, his hooves softly pressing into the earth, leaving small prints behind. Emily hummed a tune as she carried a bucket of fresh feed. It was one of those mornings that felt perfect in every way, and Rusty seemed to sense her happiness, moving with a calm and steady rhythm beside her. Everything changed when a group of new farmhands arrived at the farm. Emily's parents had hired them to help with the chores during the busy season. They were young men from a nearby town, strong and eager to work, but not familiar with horses, let alone Rusty. They carried their tools and feed bags noisily, laughing and joking as they approached the stables. Emily immediately felt a twinge of worry. Horses were sensitive to sound and energy, and Rusty, despite his calm demeanor, could get easily startled by sudden movements or loud voices. "Good morning," Emily called, trying to sound cheerful and welcoming. She introduced the new farmhands to the stables and the horses. "These are our horses. Please be gentle. Rusty especially can be a little sensitive if handled roughly," she said. The men nodded quickly, but their actions soon betrayed their lack of experience. One of them, a tall man with a broad smile, reached out to Rusty before Emily could stop him. He patted Rusty on the neck a little too hard, and Rusty flinched. Emily stepped forward, gently guiding the man's hand. "Careful," she said. "You have to be gentle. Rusty doesn't like sudden touches." The farmhands laughed it off, thinking they were just having fun. Another grabbed a handful of feed and waved it at Rusty, teasing him. Rusty's ears twitched back and forth, his eyes narrowing as he tried to understand the sudden attention. He had always been patient with Emily and her family, but these strangers didn't know how to approach him. His patience began to wear thin. Emily watched nervously, her hands moving instinctively as if she could somehow shield Rusty from the careless hands. She remembered how Rusty had reacted before when someone teased him. He had always been gentle, but there was a limit. Horses, like people, could feel when they were being treated unfairly. Emily knew that Rusty had reached that limit now. Suddenly, Rusty moved quickly, stepping forward with surprising speed. The tall farmhand laughed, thinking Rusty was just playing, but then Rusty's teeth caught the edge of the man's sleeve. It wasn't a violent bite, but it was firm enough to leave a clear mark. The farmhand yelped and stumbled back, clutching his arm. Emily rushed forward immediately, placing herself between Rusty and the man. "Rusty, stop. Easy, easy," she said in a calm, soothing voice. Rusty's ears flattened slightly, his eyes wide, but he did not move again. Emily stroked his neck gently, speaking to him as she always did. "It's okay, boy. You were protecting yourself." The farmhands looked shocked. They had not expected Rusty to react, and they quickly realized they had underestimated the horse. Emily knelt beside Rusty, running her hand along his coat to calm him. "He only bites if he feels threatened or mistreated," she explained. "He's smart and has a memory. You have to treat him with respect or he will react." The tall man rubbed his arm and muttered an apology. "I didn't know. I thought he was just playing," he said, still looking uneasy. Emily nodded, accepting the apology but knowing that this was a lesson they would never forget. Rusty, meanwhile, had already calmed down, nuzzling Emily's hand as if to say he trusted her to handle the situation. Over the next few days, Emily observed Rusty closely. He seemed to remember the incident, watching the new farmhands with cautious eyes. Whenever one of them approached too quickly or tried to touch him without warning, Rusty would step back, sometimes giving a gentle warning nip in the air. Emily called it the little warning, a way for Rusty to let them know they were crossing a line. Emily took it upon herself to train the farmhands. She explained how to feed the horses properly, how to approach them calmly, and how to use soft voices around them. She showed them the right way to pet Rusty, starting at his neck and moving slowly to the sides. Some of the men listened carefully and began to understand, while others struggled, still laughing and teasing occasionally. Rusty's reactions became a little game between him and the farmhands. He didn't bite without reason, but he had a way of showing them when they were careless. Sometimes he would nudge their legs, other times he would snap playfully at their hands if they reached too quickly for the feed. Emily would watch, half amused and half concerned. She knew Rusty was clever, and she respected his intelligence. The incident also made Emily reflect on how important patience and understanding were when working with animals. Rusty was not just a horse, he was a thinking, feeling creature. He could remember who treated him well and who didn't. He had a sense of fairness, a way of communicating without words, and Emily was beginning to see that his revenge was not cruel. It was a way of defending himself and setting boundaries. One afternoon, Emily took Rusty out for a ride to clear his mind and hers. The farmhands had been especially cautious that day, giving Rusty plenty of space and moving slowly around him. Emily climbed onto Rusty's back, feeling the familiar strength beneath her. As they trotted through the fields, she felt a sense of relief. Rusty was calm again, his ears flicking as he listened to the sounds of the countryside. The incident with the farmhands also brought the villagers' attention to Rusty. Word spread quickly about the horse that bites, and soon, people from nearby farms came to see him. Emily welcomed them carefully, explaining how to behave around Rusty and warning them not to tease him. Rusty, for his part, seemed to enjoy the attention as long as it was respectful. He stood tall and proud, his mane glistening in the sun, showing off his strength and spirit. Through it all, Emily learned an important lesson. Trust had to be earned and respect was mutual. Rusty had shown her that even the gentlest creatures had limits. He had a way of communicating his feelings clearly, and those who paid attention learned quickly. Emily felt proud of Rusty, not just for his beauty and strength, but for his intelligence and sense of fairness. At night, Emily would sit in the stable, brushing Rusty's coat and talking to him quietly. She would reflect on the day's events, thinking about how much she had learned from him. Rusty would lean into her hands, closing his eyes, completely at ease. Emily smiled, knowing that no matter what happened, they had a bond that could not be broken. The days passed, and Rusty's reputation continued to grow. People in the village admired him, not just for his looks, but for his cleverness and his sense of justice. Emily noticed that he seemed to enjoy the respect he received. He was no longer just a horse. He had become a small legend, a reminder to everyone that animals deserved understanding and care. Even though Rusty's bites were minor, they were a lesson in empathy. Emily saw how humans often underestimated the intelligence and feelings of animals. Rusty had reminded everyone that even the calmest creatures had their limits, and that trust and kindness were essential in any relationship, human or animal. Emily continued her work with the farmhands, guiding them patiently and correcting their mistakes gently. Rusty, in turn, became a teacher of sorts, showing them the consequences of carelessness without causing serious harm. It was a balance of learning and respect, one that Emily cherished deeply. By the end of the week, Rusty had returned to his usual calm self, though he remained alert. He watched the farmhands carefully, ready to give a warning nip if needed, but mostly content to enjoy his feed and the warm sun on his back. Emily felt a deep sense of gratitude for him. Rusty had taught her patience, empathy, and the importance of understanding others, lessons that went beyond the farm and into everyday life. And so, life at the farm continued, with Emily, Rusty, and the new farmhands learning to coexist in harmony. The small incidents of bites and warnings became stories to tell, reminders that respect and understanding were key to any relationship, and that sometimes, even the quietest creatures could teach the loudest lessons. As the days went by, Rusty's reputation as the clever horse grew even more. The farmhands had learned to be cautious around him, giving him space and approaching slowly. Yet, Rusty seemed to find new ways to express himself. He didn't bite often, but when he did, it was always purposeful, a gentle reminder that he had boundaries and that they should not be crossed. Emily watched him closely, fascinated by the way he communicated without words. It began with small gestures. Rusty would nudge a careless hand away or snap at a sleeve that reached too quickly for his feed. Sometimes, he would gently bite the edge of a tool bag if someone tried to move it too roughly. These were not acts of anger, but acts of intelligence. Rusty was teaching the farmhands how to respect him. Emily often stood nearby, smiling, seeing the lessons unfold right before her eyes. Some of the farmhands began to understand. They moved more carefully, spoke softly, and followed Emily's instructions. Others were more stubborn, laughing off Rusty's warnings, thinking he was only playing. Rusty quickly corrected them. One day, when a man tried to pull on his mane too roughly, Rusty gave a sharp nip on the man's arm. It wasn't harsh, but it was enough to make him yelp and step back. Emily intervened immediately, speaking softly to Rusty as she did every time. "You did the right thing, boy, but easy now," she said, stroking his neck. Rusty seemed to understand, lowering his head and leaning into her hands, a sign of trust and obedience. Emily turned to the farmhand, explaining calmly, He only reacts when he feels threatened. You must respect him and he will respect you in return." The man nodded, rubbing his arm, now more aware of the horse's intelligence and careful nature. Over time, the pattern became clear. Rusty only reacted to carelessness, and the farmhands began to see his actions as lessons rather than punishments. Some of them even started to enjoy the challenge. They learned to anticipate Rusty's reactions, moving carefully, feeding him properly, and speaking in gentle tones. Rusty, in turn, seemed to respond with approval, often nuzzling their hands when they approached correctly. Emily noticed that Rusty had a playful side, too. He would sometimes follow the farmhands around the yard, gently nudging their legs as if inviting them to interact with him on his terms. He seemed to enjoy the attention, but always maintained a sense of control. He was a teacher, a guide, and a playful companion all at once. Emily admired his intelligence and patience. Rusty was not just reacting out of instinct. He was observing, understanding, and responding in a way that demanded respect. The villagers began to hear stories about Rusty's cleverness. Word spread quickly. The horse that bites was not dangerous, but he had a sense of justice. People came to the farm to see him, curious to watch his interactions with the farmhands. Emily welcomed them cautiously, explaining how to behave around Rusty and warning them not to tease him. Rusty stood tall and proud, his mane glistening in the sunlight, showing off both his beauty and his intelligence. Emily realized that Rusty was teaching more than just the farmhands. He was teaching everyone around him about respect, patience, and understanding. Even the villagers who came to watch began to appreciate the subtle ways animals communicate. Rusty's bites and nips were small, gentle reminders that animals deserved careful attention and empathy. Emily felt proud, knowing that her horse was making a difference in the lives of others, showing them lessons that could not be taught in words alone. One morning, Emily decided to take Rusty for a longer ride. She wanted to see how he behaved outside the farm in the open fields and woods nearby. The farmhands, now more experienced, accompanied them, giving Rusty plenty of space. As they rode, Emily noticed Rusty's alertness. He was calm, but his ears flicked constantly, scanning the surroundings. He was aware of every sound, every movement, and every change in the wind. Emily felt a deep admiration for him. During the ride, Rusty's playful streak appeared again. He would sometimes veer slightly to avoid a branch, then suddenly stop and look back at Emily as if checking whether she was paying attention. Emily laughed, understanding his playful gestures. Rusty was testing her, just as he tested the farmhands. He wanted to make sure that everyone understood his limits, and that no one ever assumed they could rush him or treat him carelessly. The farmhands observed closely, learning from Emily and Rusty. They began to see the importance of patience and careful attention. Every small interaction was a lesson. If a hand reached for Rusty too quickly, he would give a warning nibble. If someone moved carefully and spoke softly, he would nuzzle them in return. It was a delicate balance, one that required respect and understanding. Emily felt proud of how well they were learning. Back at the farm, Rusty continued to demonstrate his cleverness. He would sometimes hide small objects the farmhands left lying around, only to reveal them later when he knew they were paying attention. Emily laughed at his antics, realizing that he was not just playful but also curious and intelligent. Rusty's cleverness was part of what made him so special. He was a horse who could think, observe, and act purposefully. Despite his playful nature, Rusty never acted without reason. Emily saw that his bites and nips were never mean-spirited. They were warnings, lessons, or playful reminders. Rusty had a sense of fairness, and he expected others to act accordingly. Emily often reflected on this, realizing how much humans could learn from animals. Rusty's intelligence and sense of justice were remarkable, and she felt grateful to share her life with him. The village children began to come to the farm more often, watching Rusty and learning how to behave around animals. Emily would guide them patiently, showing them how to approach Rusty, how to feed him, and how to understand his subtle signals. Rusty seemed to enjoy the attention, as long as it was respectful. He became both a teacher and a companion to the children, showing them that animals had feelings and deserved understanding. Emily noticed that Rusty's cleverness sometimes surprised even the most experienced farmhands. One day, a man tried to move a heavy gate without warning. Rusty quickly stepped forward, giving the man a gentle nip on the arm. The man yelped and stopped, startled, and Emily explained, "See, Rusty is telling you to be careful. He's not angry, he's just teaching you." The man nodded, realizing the wisdom in Rusty's actions. As time passed, Rusty's reputation grew beyond the village. People came from nearby towns to see the horse that bites with purpose. Emily welcomed them cautiously, always emphasizing respect and care. Rusty stood proudly in the sun, his chestnut coat shining, his eyes alert and intelligent. He had become more than just a horse. He was a symbol of understanding, patience, and respect. Emily often reflected on the lessons Rusty was teaching. It wasn't just about horses or farm work. It was about communication, empathy, and trust. Rusty's small bites and playful nips were reminders that every creature had boundaries, and that respect was earned, not assumed. Emily felt proud, knowing that she was helping others understand these lessons through her horse. Even at night, when the farm was quiet, Rusty seemed aware of the lessons he had taught. He would rest calmly in his stall, ears flicking at small sounds, alert but relaxed. Emily would sit beside him, brushing his mane and speaking softly. She felt a deep bond with him, a connection built on trust, respect, and understanding. Rusty had become more than just a horse. He was a partner, a teacher, and a friend. Through it all, Emily knew that life with Rusty was a journey. His cleverness, his sense of fairness, and his playful spirit made every day interesting and sometimes challenging. She embraced it, knowing that these lessons were valuable. Rusty had shown her the importance of patience, the value of empathy, and the power of respect. And she knew that this was only the beginning of their story, a story full of learning, growth, and understanding that would continue for years to come. Emily had spent years understanding Rusty, but she realized that there was always more to learn. His intelligence and sense of fairness were remarkable, but she knew that with the right guidance, they could deepen their connection even further. Rusty had taught her lessons in patience and respect, and now it was time for Emily to teach him, in ways that would strengthen their bond and channel his cleverness positively. One morning, Emily decided to start a gentle training routine with Rusty. She began by setting up small obstacles in the field, low poles for him to step over, cones to guide him around, and soft ropes to practice following commands. The goal was not to test Rusty, but to engage his mind and build trust between them. She wanted him to understand that she was both a guide and a friend, someone who respected him and wanted the best for him. Rusty watched her curiously as she prepared the course. His ears flicked and his nostrils twitched, picking up every sound in the field. Emily approached him slowly, holding a small bundle of carrots, his favorite treat. "Ready, boy?" she asked softly. Rusty nuzzled her hand, his eyes bright and alert. Emily smiled, feeling a wave of excitement. Today marked the beginning of a new chapter in their partnership. The first exercise was simple. Emily led Rusty around a series of cones, encouraging him with soft words and gentle pats. At first, he hesitated, unsure of what was being asked. But Emily remained calm, guiding him patiently without pressure. When Rusty successfully navigated the cones, she praised him warmly and offered a carrot as a reward. Rusty responded enthusiastically, stepping proudly as if he knew he had done well. This small success filled Emily with hope. She realized that training was not just about teaching Rusty commands, it was about communication. Every gesture, every word, Every touch mattered. Rusty was intelligent enough to understand intention, and he responded to care and clarity rather than force. Emily's heart swelled with pride as she watched him learn, realizing that their relationship was evolving into something even deeper than before. Over the next few days, Emily introduced new exercises. She taught Rusty to step over small logs, weave between poles, and follow her around the field without pulling or rushing. Each exercise was a chance for him to use his mind and body in harmony, and each success was rewarded with gentle praise and treats. Rusty seemed to enjoy the challenges, his eyes bright and ears alert, occasionally tossing his mane in excitement. Emily also used the training sessions to reinforce positive behavior around the farmhands. Whenever they approached Rusty correctly, he would be rewarded with gentle pats and carrots. If someone was careless, Rusty would give a small warning nip or step back. Emily explained each action to the farmhands, showing them how to interpret his signals and respond appropriately. Slowly, they began to understand Rusty's personality more fully, learning to communicate with him as partners rather than mere handlers. One afternoon, Emily decided to test Rusty's memory and problem-solving skills. She set up a small maze using fences and poles, hiding treats at specific points. Rusty approached cautiously, sniffing the ground and examining the obstacles. Emily encouraged him softly, guiding him through the first few turns. Rusty paused, thinking carefully before making each decision. He used his intelligence to navigate the maze successfully, finding the treats with a sense of pride. Emily clapped and praised him, feeling amazed at his cleverness. These exercises not only challenged Rusty, but also deepened their bond. Emily felt a growing sense of respect for his abilities. She realized that horses, like humans, thrived when their minds were engaged and when they felt safe and understood. Rusty's occasional revenge bites had been his way of communicating, but now, with training and understanding, those behaviors were being transformed into playful intelligence and confidence. The farmhands noticed the change as well. Rusty was still clever and alert, but he became more predictable in his actions. He only gave warnings when necessary and responded positively to careful handling. Emily encouraged the farmhands to participate in training sessions, showing them how to guide Rusty with gentle commands and clear intentions. They began to see the value of patience and respect, realizing that even a strong and intelligent horse needed understanding and care to flourish. Emily also worked on building Rusty's confidence in new situations. She introduced him to different environments, such as the nearby woods and small streams, guiding him calmly and reassuringly. Rusty observed everything carefully, sometimes hesitant at first, but always willing to trust Emily. Step by step, he became braver, learning to navigate unfamiliar terrain without fear. Emily praised each small victory, knowing that confidence was built gradually, not rushed. Through these training sessions, Emily learned more about Rusty than ever before. She discovered his favorite ways of moving, the gestures he responded to most strongly, and the ways he expressed excitement or caution. Rusty, in turn, seemed to understand Emily's intentions better, anticipating her commands and responding with intelligence and trust. Their connection had grown beyond routine care. It was now a partnership built on mutual respect and understanding. One evening, as the sun set over the farm, Emily reflected on the journey so far. Rusty stood nearby, grazing calmly, his mane catching the golden light. She realized how far they had come. From the early days of playful bites and warning nips, they had moved to a place of mutual respect and understanding. Rusty was still clever, still alert, but now he used his intelligence in ways that were constructive and playful rather than reactive. Emily felt proud not just of Rusty, but of herself as well. She had learned patience, empathy, and the importance of understanding another being's perspective. Rusty had taught her these lessons, and now she was teaching him, guiding him to use his cleverness in positive ways. Their journey was far from over, but the bond they shared had never been stronger. The farmhands noticed the transformation too. They were now more careful, respectful, and attentive. Rusty responded positively to their guidance, reinforcing the lessons Emily had taught them. Together, they created an environment where trust and understanding were at the forefront. Rusty's occasional playful nips had become part of a system of communication rather than a cause for concern. Emily also began documenting her experiences with Rusty. She wrote down his reactions, the exercises that worked best, and the ways he responded to different people and situations. She wanted to remember these lessons, not just for herself, but for anyone who might care for horses in the future. Rusty had become more than a horse. He was a teacher, a guide, and a partner in life. One day, Emily decided to introduce a new challenge, teaching Rusty to respond to verbal commands from a distance. She stood in the middle of the field while Rusty grazed a short distance away. Softly she called his name and gave a simple command to come. Rusty paused, his ears flicking toward her, then trotted over carefully. Emily praised him warmly and rewarded him with a carrot. They repeated the exercise several times, gradually increasing the distance. Rusty's confidence and understanding grew with each successful attempt. The transformation in Rusty was remarkable. He had gone from a clever but reactive horse to a thoughtful, intelligent, and playful partner. His revenge bites had never been cruel. They had been lessons in boundaries and fairness. But now, guided by Emily's patience and training, his intelligence was expressed in positive ways. He was a living example of how trust, respect, and understanding could transform behavior. As the season changed, Emily continued the training routine, exploring new exercises and challenges. Rusty thrived in the mental stimulation and physical activity. The farmhands, now fully aware of his intelligence and sensitivity, worked alongside Emily to maintain a calm, respectful environment. The bond between horse and human strengthened with each passing day, creating a harmony that everyone at the farm could feel. In quiet moments, Emily would sit beside Rusty, brushing his coat and speaking softly. She marveled at how far they had come together. Rusty had taught her patience, empathy, and respect. She had taught him guidance, structure, and confidence. Together, they had created a partnership built on trust, understanding, and love, a partnership that would last a lifetime. Emily realized that the lessons Rusty had taught her extended beyond the farm. They were lessons about life itself, the importance of communication, the value of patience, and the power of respect. Rusty's intelligence and cleverness had been a challenge, but also a gift. Every warning nibble, every playful movement had been a message, a reminder that understanding and care were essential in any relationship. By the end of the season, Rusty was a model of intelligence, patience, and playful cleverness. He had become a beloved figure, not only to Emily, but to the entire village. Children and adults alike admired his spirit and his mind, understanding that his occasional nips were not aggression but communication. Emily felt proud, knowing that through patience, love, and careful guidance, she had helped Rusty express his intelligence positively and constructively. And so, Emily and Rusty continued their journey together, partners in learning and life. Their bond had grown stronger, deeper, and more meaningful. Rusty was still clever, still playful, and still full of life. But now his energy and intelligence were guided by trust, respect, and understanding. Together, they had discovered a harmony that few people ever experience, a true partnership that would carry them through many adventures yet to come. By the time autumn arrived, the farm had settled into a comfortable rhythm. The mornings were crisp, with a golden sunlight filtering through the trees, and the fields were painted with shades of amber and orange. Emily had spent countless hours with Rusty over the months, and their bond had grown stronger with every passing day. Rusty, once the horse known for playful nips and warning bites, had evolved into a confident, intelligent, and gentle companion. Yet, he had not lost his cleverness or his sense of fairness. Emily often reflected on the journey they had shared. She remembered the first day the new farmhands had arrived and how Rusty had reacted. She had been nervous, worried that he might hurt someone, but Rusty had not acted out of anger. His bites had been deliberate, careful, and instructive, a way to communicate his boundaries. Over time, those small warnings had taught the farmhands patience, respect, and understanding. Emily realized that Rusty had always been more than just a horse. He had been a teacher from the very beginning. The farmhands had grown considerably since that first incident. They now approached Rusty calmly, following Emily's guidance and paying attention to his signals. Rusty responded positively, nudging them gently when he was in the mood for interaction, or simply standing quietly when he wanted space. The small incidents that once caused tension had transformed into lessons in trust and respect. Emily smiled whenever she observed these moments, proud of both Rusty and the people who had learned to care for him properly. Rusty's reputation had spread throughout the village and beyond. People were fascinated by the story of the horse that bites with purpose. But those who visited the farm quickly realized that Rusty was not dangerous. He was intelligent, observant, and fair. He had a way of teaching respect without causing harm, and anyone who treated him with care was rewarded with trust and affection. Emily often explained this to visitors, emphasizing that Rusty's cleverness was a gift, and that understanding animals required patience and empathy. One afternoon, as Emily walked through the fields, she noticed Rusty grazing calmly near the fence. A group of children had come to visit the farm, eager to see the famous horse. Emily approached slowly, calling Rusty by name. He lifted his head, ears flicking, and trotted over to her. The children watched in awe as Rusty nuzzled Emily's hand gently, his large eyes reflecting curiosity and calm intelligence. Emily knelt beside him, explaining to the children how to interact with him safely and respectfully. Rusty seemed to enjoy the attention, but he remained aware of his surroundings. Whenever a hand reached too quickly or someone moved carelessly, he would step back, giving a gentle warning with his nose or a soft nip in the air. The children quickly learned to follow Emily's instructions, and Rusty rewarded their care with gentle nudges and soft whinnies. Emily realized that Rusty was not only teaching lessons to adults, but also shaping the way children understood and respected animals. The bond between Emily and Rusty had reached a level of trust that few people ever experience with an animal. She could sense his moods, understand his gestures, and predict his reactions. Rusty, in turn, responded to her calm guidance and gentle voice. Their connection was a partnership, built on years of care, patience, and shared experiences. Emily often marveled at how much she had learned from him, lessons about empathy, patience, and the importance of understanding others. Rusty's cleverness continued to show in small, playful ways. He would sometimes hide a piece of equipment or a bucket, only to reveal it later when Emily or the farmhands were paying attention. He would follow carefully behind Emily during chores, nudging her lightly when he wanted attention or seemed curious. Each action was thoughtful, showing that he was always aware and engaged with his environment. Emily loved these moments, feeling a deep connection to a creature who was not only intelligent but also emotionally aware. As the weeks passed, Emily began to reflect on the changes in the farm as a whole. Rusty's presence had transformed not only the behavior of the farmhands, but also the atmosphere of the entire property. Everyone moved more carefully, spoke more softly, and approached the animals with a sense of respect. Even the other horses seemed to respond to Rusty's calm confidence, creating a harmonious environment that was both peaceful and productive. Emily realized that Rusty had become more than a horse. He had become a symbol of patience, intelligence, and respect for all living beings. One chilly morning, Emily decided to take Rusty for a long ride through the woods and hills surrounding the farm. The leaves crunched beneath Rusty's hooves as they walked along winding paths, and Emily felt a deep sense of contentment. Rusty moved gracefully, his head held high, alert to every sound and movement around them. Emily encouraged him gently, praising his careful steps over uneven terrain and small obstacles. Rusty responded with ease, demonstrating the confidence and trust that had developed over months of training and shared experience. During the ride, Emily reflected on the lessons Rusty had taught her. She thought about the importance of listening and observing, of understanding without forcing, and of patience in the face of challenges. Rusty's intelligence had required her to grow as a person, to be attentive, calm, and consistent. She realized that the bond between humans and animals could be as deep and meaningful as any human relationship, built on trust, understanding, and mutual respect. When they returned to the farm, Emily spent time brushing Rusty and speaking to him softly. She thought about how far they had come, from the first days of playful bites and warning nips to this point, where Rusty's cleverness was expressed through trust, cooperation, and gentle playfulness. Emily knew that their journey together was ongoing, but she felt a deep sense of fulfillment and pride in the relationship they had cultivated. The farmhands joined Emily in the stables that evening, and Rusty greeted them calmly. Each person had learned how to interact with him safely and respectfully, and Rusty responded positively, demonstrating his intelligence and awareness. Emily watched, smiling, as Rusty gently nudged each person in turn, acknowledging their care and cooperation. It was a small, simple moment, but it represented everything she had worked for, the harmony between horse and human, built on understanding and respect. News of Rusty's cleverness and fair behavior continued to spread throughout the region. Visitors came from neighboring villages to witness the horse's intelligence firsthand. Emily welcomed them, emphasizing the lessons in patience, observation, and empathy that Rusty embodied. People left the farm not only impressed by Rusty's beauty and cleverness, but also inspired by the relationship between him and Emily. Rusty had become a living example of how respect and understanding could transform behavior and create harmony. Even in quiet moments, Rusty remained alert and aware. Emily often sat beside him in the evenings, reflecting on the lessons of the day. She knew that Rusty's playful intelligence and occasional warnings were not just amusing. They were reminders of the importance of boundaries, fairness, and communication. Emily felt grateful for every moment, recognizing that their bond was a rare and special thing, one built on years of care, patience, and mutual respect. As the season drew to a close, Emily began thinking about the future. She knew that Rusty's cleverness and sense of fairness would continue to influence the farm and the people around him. His reputation as a wise, intelligent, and fair horse had spread far beyond the property, inspiring others to consider how they treated animals. Emily realized that the lessons Rusty taught went beyond the farm. They were lessons about life itself, about kindness, patience, and understanding. One cool evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Emily stood beside Rusty and watched the sky turn shades of pink and gold. She thought about everything they had experienced together, the challenges, the lessons, and the quiet moments of joy. Rusty stood tall and calm, his eyes reflecting the fading light. Emily smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace and fulfillment. Rusty had not only been a companion but also a teacher, guiding her toward greater empathy, patience, and understanding. The farm had become a place of harmony, where humans and animals coexisted with mutual respect. Rusty, once known for his playful warnings and clever nips, had become a symbol of intelligence, fairness, and trust. Emily knew that their journey was ongoing, but she also knew that they had achieved something rare, a true partnership between human and horse, built on love, understanding, and respect. As night fell, Emily brushed Rusty one final time before heading to the farmhouse. She whispered softly to him, "Thank you for everything, Rusty, for teaching me, guiding me, and trusting me." Rusty nuzzled her hand gently, as if acknowledging her words. Emily felt a deep sense of connection, realizing that this bond would last a lifetime. Rusty had become more than just a horse. He was a teacher, a partner, and a friend, whose cleverness and fairness had left a lasting mark on everyone who knew him. The story of Rusty's intelligence, playful cleverness, and sense of fairness would be remembered in the village for years to come. Visitors continued to come, inspired by the lessons he embodied. Emily reflected on how much she had grown alongside him, learning patience, empathy, and the importance of respecting boundaries. Rusty had shown her that understanding and kindness could transform behavior and create lasting harmony, not just with animals, but with all living beings. And so, life at the farm continued, filled with quiet mornings, gentle routines, and shared moments of trust and understanding. Emily and Rusty had created a bond that was rare and beautiful, a bond that would endure through the seasons, through challenges and joys alike. Rusty remained clever, playful, and aware, a living testament to the power of respect, patience, and empathy. Emily knew that as long as they had each other, they would face whatever came next together, united by a connection that was stronger than words, deeper than fear, and full of love.